here and our wonderful program and guests and dinner, and we look forward to getting to know each other at the table. But first, I would ask you to stand and have our Pittsford Town Justice, Bob Shattuck, lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Prayer for a blessed meal, and especially for our service men and women who are protecting us here in the United States and abroad. Bless us all, bless this food, bless Pittsford, and bless our great candidates who will be working hard this year to represent our values for us here in Pittsford, in Monroe County, in New York State, and the United States. Amen. Amen. All right. So I would like to take a moment to thank some special guests that we have here today. I would like to first recognize, first and foremost, Kate Munsinger. Where's Kate? Kate is right here. Everyone knows Kate. As you know, Kate is our deputy supervisor in the town of Pittsford and the Pittsford Town Board. But more importantly, this evening, she is the queen who organized this evening's function, did all the hard work, and so thank you so much, Kate, for making that happen. We have this evening, and we will hear from him towards the end of the program, our great supervisor from the town of Pittsford, Bill Smith, is here. Leading us in our Pledge of Allegiance was our justice running for re-election this year in the town of Pittsford, Bob Shattuck. We have with us Matt O'Connor and Mary Doyle, who are former members of our Pittsford Town Board and served us so well. Thank you both. We have Carla Boyce. Carla is right here. I had the pleasure of working with Carla on the Monroe County Legislature, and she will be working hard this year as our candidate in Monroe County for the Monroe County Clerk's position. Thank you, Carla. We have Marge Burns, who's joining us tonight. She is our New York State Assemblywoman running for re-election in the 133rd District. We have George Mitras, who's here, who is running for U.S. Congress in the 25th District. And we're joined this evening by Chris Missick, who is here this evening running for the New York State Senate, 55th District. And I'd also like to recognize Carol McManus, who's with us tonight. She's our former county legislator representing us in Pittsburgh. Thank you, Carol. And of course, the dinner would not be able to happen without having the Honorable Jack Doyle, our former county executive, who's here. Nothing happens without Jack, so thank you for being here, Jack. Jack also did help with our fundraising for this evening's dinner, so thank you, Jack. So with that, we've got some great candidates this year for election. We have, as you know, things have changed here in Pittsford a little bit, but one thing hasn't changed, that this is one of the greatest communities to live in Monroe County, in New York State, and in the United States. And as we've always said, that doesn't happen by accident. That happens from great leaders that we have today, as much as great leaders that we've had in the past, and a steadfast, resolute mission to keep Pittsford the great place that we've grown up in, or at least I know I've grown up in, and many of you here have lived here for at least many, many years. And so it's important that we fight for that. And so when we gather tonight, as we enjoy our meals together and we listen to our great guest speaker tonight, we should reflect on why we're here. We're here, of course, for camaraderie, but we're also here, we're raising money so that we can fund our great campaigns for Bob Shattuck this year. And we'll be funding our campaigns to take back the town board next year, led by our supervisor, Bill Smith. And so with that, tonight's program, we're going to, in just a moment, we're going to listen to Laura Jean Dykeman sing God Bless America. If you haven't met Laura Jean or heard her beautiful voice, you're about to, and it truly is something special. We're excited to have her here at the dinner, but even more excited to have her on the committee. She's really brought a lot of energy and great ideas to this committee, and we look forward to more from Laura Jean in the very near future. After Laura Jean, we will enjoy our salads and have dinner, and then we will hear from our guest speaker. So, Laura Jean, if you'd like to lead us.
God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with a light from above. From the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans, white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home.
Thank you, Laura Jean. That was great. Good evening, everyone. Hopefully you are enjoying your meal. Thank you to the staff here at the Burgundy Basin Inn for hosting us this evening, them being in our town, certainly. We have some other guests who have joined us who I'd like to introduce. First and foremost, former leader of the Pittsford Republican Committee, great Republican, and our Supreme Court Justice who's running for re-election, Dan Doyle, is joining us this evening. Thank you, Dan. We also have Peter Vasquez, who's here, who's running for the New York State Assembly's 138th District. Peter, thank you for joining us this evening. And a great friend to the county, a great friend to our party, certainly has helped me out in the past as a candidate and as an elected official. Peter Elder, please stand here from the Board of Elections. I know it must seem like an easy task to run an election, but we all know that it is actually not. So thank you, Peter, for all the hard work that you do. At this time, I'd like to introduce Paul Irving, who is a longstanding member of our committee and who helped put this evening together, to introduce our guest speaker.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you for coming. We hold the Reagan Day dinner every year to celebrate the life and the legacy of the great American Ronald Reagan, one of the best presidents in our history. So we try to get speakers here that are somehow tied to Ronald Reagan and his ideals. And last year we were fortunate enough to get Dan Quigley here, who was a former Reagan aide, wrote the book, Be Like Reagan. And I'm thinking, well, how do I follow this up? And I got the great idea of, well, I know this guy that embodies Ronald Reagan's principles to a T. He is an immigrant that fled a communist country, came here not speaking the language, and worked hard, learned English, got himself an education, had a family, and is an American success story. He also embraces Ronald Reagan's philosophies and ideals. It's my pleasure to introduce my friend, Louis Martinez.
So I'm just sincerely very honored and pleased to be able to address this group's audience about a topic that's very important to me. I've done a lot of business topics for many years, but I've never done a topic of this nature. So you're seeing the first as regards my speaking engagements, but what I have to do now is manage my energy because I'm so excited about what I'm going to show you and the reasons why. I hope that you share that with me. That I want you to get from this the inspiration that I'm trying to share. Who wrote that? Who do you think? Who would you attribute that quote to? The luckiest person in the history of civilization, ladies and gentlemen. The history of civilization is a long time. And this person said, the luckiest person in the history of civilization is a baby born in the United States today.
Ronald Reagan.
Oh, by the way, I would love for this to be a dialogue, but here's what's going on. That I'm used to doing a lot of guest lectures at colleges and all that sort of thing where it is a dialogue. I don't like doing speeches, I like doing dialogues, but the thing is that they're going to kick me out of here if I go on too long. So that's who quoted that. I was sitting in my office upstairs, and I always have Bloomberg TV, Bloomberg News running in the background. And I'm sitting there working on my computer, and I hear this voice. I mean, I know who Warren is, but I hear this voice, and I said, I can't believe I just heard that. So I started following it, and then I went back and looked for that video, and I found it. And you can look it up too. It happened in August of 2018. He actually said that. I have corroborated that many times by watching the video. So that's an amazing statement from that fellow, from anyone, but it's an amazing statement from a person who actually knows what's going on in the world and who can do a comparative analysis of the likelihood of that happening in any country. Now, the rest of of my presentation is going to be in three parts. The first one is what I call the foundation, which is how did the United States of America become what it is today, foundational in terms of the documentation and the initiative that our founders had. Number two, the current state. What are we facing? What is it that we as individuals are facing now, even with our history? And number three, my journey. That's the part where I talk about how I came to the United States and what this means to me. So launching right into it. First of all, what does it mean to be exceptional? Well, the definition uses words like rare, superior, extraordinary, out of the ordinary. That's what exceptional means. So how is it that the United States can be exceptional? Well, here's the power of the pen. Now, look at the key words here. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created. There's a huge implication here with the word created equal, and that they are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. And you heard that expression many times, but I want you to focus on what this means. Before life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, they created and the creator. This will weigh heavily as we proceed in the rest of our analysis here. Why did they create a list of rights? Well, the people who created the parchment, the Declaration of Independence, they had something that they wanted to discuss, to talk about, to bring to being, to bring into reality. And that is to preserve the rights of the divine, sovereign individual. That's each one of us. Divine meaning that we were created by a creator, a higher authority. Someone bigger than all of us in the room, someone bigger than everything on the planet, someone bigger than the actual planet. That was their intent in creating what we call human rights. It was a radical document then, for sure, but why is it still a radical document? Why is it that using words like creator and created are so radically against the sort of the grain that we hear out there in terms of how we get along? The document lists prohibitions against government interference with our human rights. Okay, you'll see why that's important in a minute. Why is it mentioned so often today? Well, because we have a struggle. We have an ongoing struggle, that's the current state, between the sovereign individual and the state, the collective, as I call it. So those words that are written in the preamble are not just a simple defense of individual rights, but they actually went on offense, if you will, against government that would interfere, that had the possibility of interfering with those human rights. That's why it was so radical. By the way, who is this ultimate arbiter who is implied in the preamble? Well, that person would be God. And where is this common good? Where is the common good in the preamble? It doesn't exist. So when you hear the words, the common good, which is one of the favorite words of collectivists, the fact is that it's a made-up concept because it did not exist in our original document. I'm not speaking, by the way, as a constitutional scholar or anything like that. It's just what I see. I'm just a reader. I'm just reading this, and I come to that conclusion after reading it. It took an Englishman, to declare that America is the only nation in the world that is founded on a creed. That creed is that we are divine individual, where divine sovereign individual is a creed, as a thought, it's a concept that was new then, and for some people, it's still new now. You'll see why. When I was in college in University of Delaware, I was a freshman in my first poli-sci class when I became enthralled by this phrase by Emil Durkheim. When mores are sufficient, laws are necessary. I can give you a lot of examples that where mores are sufficient. I'll give you an easy one. If you go to Pittsford Wegmans, or any Wegmans that I've ever been in, you will see that ladies push their shopping carts and they leave their bag, their purse in the cart. They go off looking for a vegetable or something and come back and the bag's still there. Don't do that in other places, because the mores are sufficient in our community such that she knows that person will still be there. There's no sign on the wall of Reagan that says, "Thou shalt not take somebody else's pocketbook." That's what mores mean. When mores are insufficient, laws are unenforceable. Think about all the crime that takes place in certain parts of our country, sometimes certain parts of our own family, because they violated a more. By the way, where did mores come from? Remember Creator? Remember created? That's where mores come from. That's the arbiter that is implied in the preamble of the Constitution. There was a speech that was made by Attorney General Barr in October at Notre Dame University. If you haven't seen that, I really urge you to go find it and listen to it. It takes about 40 minutes. Listen to the power of that speech that he made on behalf of the divine sovereign individual at Notre Dame University last October. The one phrase that I wanted to, there's so many things that I could quote from that particular speech, but the one that I wanted to concentrate on right here, which refers to my topic, is that the fact is that there's no secular creed that can replace the original creed that the founders had. Attorney General Barr at Notre Dame University last year, and I really encourage you to listen to that particular speech that he made. What does the United States offer? Okay, well, they offer three things. The United States offers the divine sovereignty of the individual, which we talked about, a Bill of Rights that defines what those sovereign human rights are, and a constitutional representative republic. We're not a democracy, and I'll tell you why that can be very dangerous. So we have a Bill of Rights and a constitutional republic. It was Thomas Sowell, who is an economist, who you should get acquainted with, because he's the one that should have received a Nobel Prize for economics rather than Paul Krugman. And he made it clear that there are responsibilities. The collective says that to believe in personal responsibility would be to destroy the whole special role of the anointed. The anointed are those in the collective whose special role in their vision casts them in the role of rescuers of people treated unfairly by society. That's Thomas Sowell. You should get acquainted with his writing and how he views the role of the individual versus the collective. Part two, that was part one, which is the foundation that I told you. Part two is the current state. The current state is our struggle between the divine sovereignty individual and collectivism. What is collectivism? Collectivism is political or economic theory advocating the effective control, especially of production and distribution. So the emphasis is on control. The collectivists want to control. The collectivists insist that they have solutions, but what do they have solutions for? A lot of the solutions that they promote are solutions to problems that they created, because it becomes a virtual cycle for them where they create a problem and then they want to solve it. So we as individuals never have a chance to participate because they want to be the ones who are in control. How do collectivists view our Bill of Rights? Well, they view them as rights provided by the government, that's how they view it, or they view it as obstacles in the way of government. Who are the collectivists excluding and replacing in that process? God, because they have no use for God. They decide what
what is fair. They decide what's morally appropriate. They decide what the mores should be. What is a nightmare to a collectivist? The nightmare to a collectivist is an individual, a sovereign individual with a direct relationship to God. So when I think of myself as having a direct relationship to God and taking care of my family and friends and maybe my county and my state in that order. But a collectivist views it exactly opposite. First, your allegiance to the state. Second, maybe to your family. And no, never mind about God. Because that would interfere with their view of what mores are or should be. There's a fellow, a Frenchman, who 150 years ago wrote a book called The Law. And he identified, 150 years ago, why collectivism is so compelling for some people. And it's because it's always tempting to do good at someone else's expense. See? That's the collectivist mind. Doing good at someone else's expense. So there's no end to the virtue signaling from a collectivist who wants to do good as long as somebody else is paying for it. That was identified by Frederick Bastiat. So if you have, if you can find his book, it's a small book, Frederick Bastiat, who was speaking as if he were in today's economy 150 years later. Another gentleman I want to bring to your attention is Walter Myers, also an economist. And he points out the fundamental arrogance of collectivism, that they believe that they are the anointed who will take care of your needs, right? So you shouldn't have to worry about yourself. Let the anointed take care of you by, of course, collecting somebody else's money to then dispense it at their will. But who anointed them to that position? So think about this. I don't know if you've ever heard this quote from a journalist, I can't remember, from back in the early 1900s. He said, this is about journalism, the profession. Their mission is to afflict the comfortable and comfort the afflicted. That's the role of journalism. I'm thinking, that sounds pretty cool, until you ask the following question. Who died and left you in charge of deciding who should be afflicted and who should be comforted? That is the arrogance of that statement. And it is also the arrogance of the collectivist who believes that they are the anointed to decide who should be taken care of. There's a picture here where James Madison says, charity is no part of the legislative duty of government. Charity is not part of government. So yeah, that sounds pretty strong. It sounds pretty, if you will, self-centered. And the fact is that the common good is not a human right. How do I know? Because if it requires my labor, it is not a human right. Think about that. If it requires my labor, it is not a human right. If that were true, then whoever has the biggest gun has the human right. Think about it. If it requires my labor, it's not a human right. And if the opposite is true, if a human right is something that requires my labor, then whoever has the biggest gun is the winner of getting the human right. There is if you know what a hockey chart is, it goes along the millennia for centuries, flat, 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 suddenly spikes up. Why is that the most important hockey stick chart in the world? Because it describes the GDP, the gross domestic product of all nations, beginning with what? The Industrial Revolution, with capitalism. It was capitalism that allowed the wealth that we have today. Remember this because they'll push back, but you think about this. More wealth equals less poverty. More wealth equals less poverty. Because the opposite is not true. More poverty is not any better, but more wealth equals less poverty in general. How that wealth is distributed, both willingly and unwillingly, is a different story, but more wealth equals less poverty, and that's what that chart shows. Did socialism build that chart? Nope. You didn't build that. Socialism cannot do that. Here's a question you can ask any person who advocates for socialism. With this question, you will stop them dead in their tracks, because they will not have an answer. It's very simple. How does socialism create wealth? It doesn't. By design, socialism is strictly a distributive proposal. It does not create wealth. All it does is distribute somebody else's wealth. So anybody who says, oh, but with socialism, yeah, but where are you going to get the money from? Where's the wealth coming from? It's not. I have a photograph of several people you would instantly recognize. Robert Reich, who used to be the head of labor for, I think for Carter and Clinton, I think. Clinton for sure. And I have Elizabeth Warren, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Paul Krugman, and a bunch of Antifa. And my question to them is, do any of the elite college professors, do any of the social justice warriors, do any equality radicals and socialist wannabes, do any of them actually live as socialists? Well, you know, I've been, all my career, I've been working very closely with engineers and scientists and so forth, and I used to be actually a certified statistician at one time, and we used to say, nothing speaks louder than a zero. So the question I just asked, do any of these elites actually live and behave as socialists? The answer is no. They're all capitalists, because socialism doesn't create any wealth at all, anytime, anywhere. It is by design not intended to do that. Next time an equality warrior, a radical equality warrior says something about, oh, you know, equality, ask them this question. Tell me, please, what exactly is wrong with inequality? What I mean by that is inequality in results. We all have equality before the law. We have equal access to food, housing, and so forth. I'm not discussing that. I'm talking about the results. In every family here, there is inequality. I can give you my examples in my own family. My little sister was born after me, and she was mentally retarded. She never had a chance. The inequality was built there. Here's what Alexander Solzhenitsyn said when he was being tortured in the Gulag in Siberia. He said, human beings are born with different capacities. If they are free, they are not equal by way of their results. And if they are equal, then they are not free. So a person who is born with great talents in a certain way, that person can achieve things, assuming that they actually work for it, in a way that others can't. It's a built-in inequality that occurs at birth. So we can legislate, and we have that legislation, equal opportunity, but once you start legislating for equal results, the only way you can enforce that is at gunpoint, which is collectivism. How did Warren Buffett, come to the spectacular realization that a baby born in the USA is the luckiest person in the history of civilization? Because he knows that in the United States, in our system, it's about equal opportunity of the sovereign individual in the free market. So what is it that immigrants are trying to escape from? They're trying to escape from collectivism and mob rule. Now here I would have shown you part 3, which is my arrival in the United States, and the fact that I was sent to the United States by myself. My parents sent me, I was 12 years old, because they wanted to get me out, because I was already marching in the militia, I was in uniform, and the Castro government was already indoctrinating me. So they sent me to the United States. The other part that you don't see is that my aunt and my uncle, my mother's brother and sister, were part of the revolution. So they came down from the mountains as rebels. And I would have photographs here to show you how they arrived in Havana in 1959. They were rebels with Castro. But it only took until 1960, about 18 months, midsummer 1960, and Castro, what the Spanish word uses, intervened. He expropriated all U.S. properties, all international properties and businesses on the island. Overnight, suddenly, without warning. He suddenly declared that all of those properties and businesses were nationalized. So now he owned them. So that began socialism, because from that point forward, doing any kind of private enterprise was impossible. Then came the diaspora to the United States, where you see all the photographs of people on rafts and so forth coming to the United States. I did not come on a raft. Fortunately, my parents were able to put me on a Pan American DC-6, and I landed in Miami, and I was received by some distant relatives. Within 100 days of that, of landing in Miami, I was standing out in the snow in South Jersey in front of my junior high school. Everything that if you saw the photograph, everything that my sister and I are wearing is from the Salvation Army. Everything. From the hat to the boots. Why? Because we came literally off the plane with tropical clothes, and we couldn't bring any money or anything to buy clothes with. So the Emmanuel Methodist Church in Pittsford, New Jersey, clothed us using, obviously, used goods and so forth. And they found an apartment for my parents to live in, and they helped my father find a job swapping decks in a truck diner, and that's how we got started. My father used to bring $42.08 a week cash. He would put it on the bed, and he would spread it around, and he would do the budget, the weekly budget from that, for a family of four, $42.08. I'll never forget that. But within a couple of years, by 1963, he put money down on a small house. He bought the house. He had a 55 Chevy, and I got a newspaper route, and I was able to begin my free enterprise, which is I would buy the newspapers and sell them for a small profit and so forth. Why do so many immigrants want to come to the USA? Well, because of the American dream. Now, I had my vision of the American dream. Think about this. My father's boss in Havana had a nice big house, a French-style stucco, and he had a half-moon driveway, and on that driveway was something that I'll never forget. It was a 57 Buick, 4-door, hardtop, baby blue, two-tone. I'm a car guy. So that image is firmly ensconced in my mind. So any person looking at this image of, the beautiful home, half-moon driveway, manicured lawn, 57 Buick, would say, well, one or two things. I said, when I grow up, I want to have this lifestyle. I want my family to live in a nice home like this, to have a 57 Buick, if you will, the equivalent, and so forth. We actually achieved that. And Sharon could tell you that we achieved that, the half-moon drive, including the half-moon driveway. But my point is that another person looking at the very same scene could draw a different conclusion, which is nobody should have that much money. Who would say that? A collectivist. The person who thinks that they are anointed to be the person who actually should tell you how much you can have and when, what quality, and how often. So the American dream is brought to you by three things we already mentioned: the divine sovereignty of the individual, the Bill of Rights, constitutional representative republic. Those are your rights. But what about responsibilities? That's the other side of the coin. And I have here a quote from Dr. Jordan B. Peterson, a clinical psychologist in the University of Toronto. I highly recommend that you get acquainted with Dr. Peterson. He says, and think about the wisdom of this, he says, the successful among us delay gratification and bargain with the future. So, frankly, when all of us go to college, we are delaying our gratification of a nicer job and so forth, because first we got to get educated, we got to get credentialed in whatever we're trying to achieve. And we're bargaining with the future that when we eventually get those credentials, that there's still a reason for us to do that, a market reason. So my parents did both of those things. By 1963, I told you that they had that house it was in a place called Dover, Delaware. And so by 1967, here's the clue though. They used the free market to figure out something. My father said one day, there's this really nice neighborhood that we should move to. We should sell this house and go to that one. My mother said, no, wait a minute. We should keep this house and rent it out and buy that one. My father says, well, how are we going to do that? Well, you're the accountant. Figure it out. He did. Okay? He did. I actually have a TED Talk that discusses that whole process called Play to Win. My mother was always a visionary. My father was more conservative, but they worked it out because they had it. So by 1967, they have two houses. Then they bought the third. Then they put the fourth. Then my father, who was just a non-exempt accounting bookkeeper type, he actually developed a portfolio of rental properties. My father only worked for 25 years in the United States. He retired in 1987. And within 25 years, they went down to Miami, they paid cash for their home, and he still had enough money so that my mother, who's 102 years old today, she's still lives in Miami, and she's still living from the money that my father put together way back in the 1980s. So it's been 30 years. So that's the power of the American dream when you join it with a sense of a mission and something that you can actually work. This is before the internet. My father, spoke enough English, but it was a much more different time than it is today for doing something like that. So I have something called the gold triangle, and it's 3 parts. At the top is God, over on the left is freedom, and on the right is talent. So those are the things that are mentioned in the preamble to the Declaration of Independence, which is life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So God, freedom, and your talent. Is there if we have an American dream, is there a French dream? Is there a Spanish dream? I have an example here of Marc Antoine. He's a jazz guitarist. Sharon and I like jazz. And we had followed him here and there, and we had a chance to meet his wife, Rebecca, who's from Spain. So Marc Antoine is from Paris, Rebecca's from Spain. They try to make, she's a ballerina, they try to make a business in Europe. You can do a business in Europe, but it's much more difficult than here. And they almost went broke trying to do it. So they came back to the United States and immediately they flourished. So today they have a very nice business in the arts that they could not launch in Europe to the same degree, to the same success. Now, regarding immigrants again, we are 5% of the world's population, but we absorb 20% of immigrants. We absorb almost 1 million people every year, legally, almost 1 million people every year for the last many years. Now, among them are Canadians, so I did a little research. It turns out that there's over 1 million Canadians in the US. You might say, well, so what? Well, proportionally to their population, if we had the same proportion of Americans going to Canada, there would be 9 million Americans in Canada. That's how many Canadians escape universal health care and all those free things that they have in Canada. They also escape from high taxes and a very high cost of living to afford all that, and they live in the United States. So it would be a scandal if 9 million Americans had to go to Canada for health care. There's Candace Owens posted something on Twitter. She says, we didn't come here for welfare, meaning immigrants. We immigrants did not come here for welfare. And she's defending immigrants from a different era, from Italy, from Greece, from Bulgaria, from Ukraine, not only just Cuba and Venezuela. We didn't come here for welfare. We came here to do things differently. And then there's another Facebook post by this lady who's from Costa Rica, and she says, nobody flees capitalism for the prosperity of socialism. Nobody. And then she asks, this is brilliant, where are the American refugee camps? Where are the American refugee camps? How many Americans leave the United States to go to a refugee camp anywhere? They don't exist, of course. So then I have a photograph of Gloria Alvarez. Gloria Alvarez is a lady from Guatemala who is the exact opposite of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. The exact opposite. You should look for Gloria Alvarez from Guatemala and watch her videos. She actually speaks at the United Nations. She speaks at the European Parliament. She is a fantastic economist, about the same age. And I'm telling you, after you listen to Gloria Alvarez, you will realize that AOC is not qualified to carry the briefcase of Gloria. I'll tell you that. All you have to do is just watch her. It was Alexis de Tocqueville who said, America is great because America is good. Yes, you are. This is a beautiful place to live. You should be proud of that. I am here because you invited us, because you received us, because you welcomed us. Without any constraints whatsoever. I've never been constrained by anybody because of where I come from. And now that I'm an American, I welcome others to be able to participate in the same blessings. So America is great because America is good. That was by Tocqueville. Then I have many examples of organizations that were created by immigrants, and I'll give you some examples here. By Ariana Huffington from Greece. Zumba by Alberto Perez from Colombia. Tesla, you already know about Elon Musk from South Africa. Intel by Andrew Grove from Hungary. Chobani Yogurt by Hamdi Ulukaya from Turkey. Kohl's, the department store, by Maxwell Cole from Hungary. eBay by Pierre Omidyar from France and Iran. The one I like is WhatsApp. Do any of you use WhatsApp, the texting app? That was created by Jan Koum. Listen to this story. Jan Koum is a Ukrainian Jew. He came to the United States, and he wanted to be able to communicate back to his family in the Ukraine. So he created a texting platform. By word of mouth, he grew that texting platform to 700 million daily users. So he sold that texting platform, WhatsApp, to Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook for $19 billion. Now, this happened about 4 or 5 years ago. I ask you this question. How many people did Jan Koum crush, oppress, obliterate, kick to the curb, and how many people did he stand on the shoulders of to achieve his $19 billion? The answer is none, of course. Actually, he made thousands of people who were part of the organization very rich, and including a few more billionaires than just him. So that's the story of Jan Koum, a Ukrainian who built a huge enterprise based on an idea. That's just one example. I think the number is 24% of all new businesses in America are created by immigrants. I have a photograph of Dr. Ben Carson, who says, through hard work, perseverance, and faith in God, you can live your dreams. So I'm closing out by saying we talked about our foundation, about our current state of the individual versus the collective, and my journey. So it was Reagan who said, if we lose freedom here, there is no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Ronald Reagan. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Louis, for sharing your story and your passion, and especially appropriate at this time where all you have to do is watch the Saturday Night Live skits that are the Democratic presidential debates, and you can relate to this idea of socialism. And I think we all know in this room that is just a dysfunctional way to not run a country. So at this point, I personally want to thank you all for being here, but before we adjourn, I would like to invite our great leader of the town of Pittsford, the guy who worked his tail off last year to make sure we kept the supervisor seat and kept Kate on the town board and truly led our party to success last year. And I know that we're counting on him to do the same this year and next year and many years to come. So if you were thinking about retiring, good luck with that. You're not allowed. Bill Smith, our supervisor, please come forward.
Louise, thank you for that splendid address, although I've got to tell you, you made me feel kind of guilty because I come before you tonight and before every one of these people as someone who has not deferred gratification. At least not tonight. I can't think of one thing more gratifying Now, being in a room full of Republicans who support our party and who understand the importance of supporting our quality of life in Pittsford and who love our community. By God, if that's not real gratification, I don't know what it is. And so it falls to me, the happy opportunity to thank all of you for your support of our party tonight and in the past. I don't think anything I can say can speak as powerfully to the importance of what you do and your support than the fact that just 2 days ago, 2 of our Democrats on the town board sent a letter to the state legislature and the governor demanding that there be no changes made to this law that just put all the criminals back out onto the streets. That's what we're dealing with. It's really interesting. For that, just that one moment, they let the mask slip. Every now and then, they do that. What's really interesting to me is that, in law school, they teach you something. They teach you to look through the form of things to the substance. And being able to do that, our campaign team this past year, that helped inform our judgment as to why we had the success we have when everybody had written off the Republicans in Pittsford at that point, because we're accustomed to thinking of this dichotomy between Democrats and Republicans and that kind of partisanship. There's an extent, of course, to which that's always true. But the real dividing line between people in Pittsburgh is between people who live in Pittsburgh and like the place, and people who live in Pittsburgh and don't really like the place that much. They like the quality of life here. They like the advantages they have. They like their neighborhoods. They like all the advantages of living here. But they don't really like the place so much. After all, we are a town that has a first-rate school system. We are a town that is aesthetically beautiful. We are a town that has a low crime rate and great public amenities, and that's not fair. That's not social justice. And they have a plan for dealing with that, which is to try and bring our community down. Well, our challenge is to make sure they don't get a chance to do it. And because of your support, I guarantee you, they will not. We will keep fighting the fight, and we're going to have even greater success 2 years from now when we take back those seats in our town hall that they took in 2017. With that, thank you all so much. Greatly appreciated, and have a wonderful evening.